Hello, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
Today, we will be breaking down the Steelers' Thanksgiving win, 28-7 over the Indianapolis Colts. But briefly, before we begin, I just wanted to ask you how your Thanksgiving went, and I also wanted to wish you a happy belated birthday. I know your birthday was the day after Thanksgiving. How was everything last week?
It went well. I mean, it was capped off by a Steelers win, so it was a good Thanksgiving. And then my birthday went well. I got to parade around in my Steelers stuff like I normally do after the day after Steelers win, and it was great. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it wasn't too bad. I already talked about, I believe in the last episode, about how I was down in Florida. The internet went down in Florida, or at the house I was staying at, for pretty much the rest of the vacation. So that's why I had so much trouble posting our podcast episode to YouTube this past week. But all in all, aside from that, it was a pretty good time. And you're absolutely right. It was punctuated by a nice Steelers victory on Thanksgiving, their first in the modern era of NFL play, and their first since 1950. The Steelers now improved to 6-5. It was another quality road win, their second in as many weeks. And all of a sudden, they're right back into the playoff picture, and they're again tied for first place in the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens. How did it happen, Austin?
Ooh, it happened through multiple ways. The offense was clicking, the defense was clicking. I would definitely say that defense played more of a role, but it was really good. Most of it came from Antonio Brown, though. I guess. So I guess I should attribute it to the offense, but Antonio Brown scored 3 touchdowns, and that pretty much won it for us.
It was absolutely a team effort, if you will. The Colts, the Steelers set the tone right away on the first play from scrimmage. Scott Tolzien sacked by William Gay in a fumble. However, he was able to recover it, but it was just clear that at least at that for that juncture of the game, the Steelers were going to be in control. The Steelers scored touchdowns on each of their first 3 drives. It felt like that was the offense that we had all been waiting to see all year, and it finally came together, at least for a brief period. Le'Veon Bell had open running room and was taking as much yardage as he pleased, and Ben was finding the open receiver, usually Antonio Brown, but Ladarius Green and Eli Rogers also made a nice couple of plays of their own early on, and it really felt like the Steelers could have won this game maybe like 56-0, sort of, at least early on. As I mentioned, the defense played well early on, and really something they did well all game was stopping the run, particularly Frank Gore. He carried the ball 15 times for only 28 yards. Part of that's because of the Steelers getting ahead early on, but still was a nice performance. The final score, though, won't tell the entire story. I felt like at halftime the Steelers kind of maybe took their foot off the gas pedal a little bit. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think this is very similar to when we got blown out 21-14 against the Ravens. You wouldn't see that we got blown out, but we did. And here this was a closer game than 28-7. It was much closer than that, especially coming after the second half.
Yeah, alluding to what you were mentioning, the Colts had the ball for the majority of the second half, it feels like, and they had several opportunities to score, including 2 separate occasions where they had first and goal and they weren't able to score touchdowns. I remember the last one, the last play in those 2 sequences was a drop pass in the end zone that really could have made it a game, but the Steelers defense held tough in their classic bend but don't break style, and the Steelers offense was able to run out the clock, if you will. Antonio Brown capped off the Steelers scoring with his 3rd touchdown of the game. And you know, it may not be the sexiest performance, if you will, but a win is a win. and it's definitely another step in the right direction. And honestly, there aren't many times that when you're playing on a Thursday night, whether it's Thanksgiving or not, that you're going to get a clean game regardless with such a little amount of time to prepare for the game. I think that we, as fans, have to be pleased with the result. And although the last 2 weeks have been nice and good wins, it's going to be important to remember that next week is a big challenge against the Giants. But for now, this was definitely another big win for the Steelers, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, I completely agree.
So let me check this out here. Who stuck out to you for on offense and defense?
Ooh, most of my players that stuck out are defensively. Of course, Antonio Brown had his 3-touchdown game, but I really wanted to focus on the defense because I thought they did really well. First, William Gay. William Gay allowed only 2 receptions for 22 yards the whole game, so he played really nice. And then also, of course, he forced the fumble on the first play, which was a strip sack. He also recorded an interception late in the game. Overall, he played really well. Moving on to Mike Mitchell. The man just had a great day. All season he's been struggling, but he really came through in this game with his interception. Not only that, he stopped Tolzien from running in a touchdown twice. It was like 3rd and goal on both times, and Tolzien had an open lane, but Mike Mitchell shut him down. It was great. He also laid some big hits. One of his hits actually took T.Y. Hilton out of the game, so that was probably a difference maker. He also had 6 solo tackles and assists as well. And I completely attribute his success to us crapping on him. The superstition stands that when you crap on a player in this podcast, they do the next week or the next game. It's just what happened. And then lastly, I have Javon Hargrave being standout. He had a great game following the best game of his career so far at Cleveland. He recorded a sack and 5 tackles, including 2.5 for a loss. He was constantly applying pressure on Tolzien, notching 2 quarterback hits. I really like how he's coming along, and I really wanted to show him some appreciation because I saw it.
You're absolutely right. The superstition, the status of that precedes itself. It just, what is this, like the 3rd time this has happened now?
Yeah, I think so.
Going back to who you were talking about with Hargrave, I remember Chris Collinsworth was mentioning this, that he was well renowned in South Carolina State for his pass rushing abilities, but as a nose tackle mostly you don't rush the passer. Due to Cameron Hayward's injury, we've got to see him rush the passer a lot the last couple weeks, and it's been pretty nice to see him do what he has been able to do the last 2 weeks. Going back to players who stood out for me, I'm going to ride your coattails on this one, and Mike Mitchell again stood out to me. A week after we had been crushing him for not recording any sort of turnovers through the first 10 or 11 weeks of the season, and being just somewhat unnoticeable, someone who could lay the hard hit but was missing tackles. He played about as well of a game as I think he's played in his entire Steelers career, going on 3 years now. It felt like he was flying all over the place, making tackles, filling the holes in run support, and most of all, he was making his presence known to the Colts offense, and particularly their receivers, with several hard hits on T.Y. Hilton and, as you mentioned, Scott Tolzien too, and his hard work finally resulted in his first interception of the season. On offense, I'm going to look at Antonio Brown first and foremost. He only had 5 catches, but 3 of them went for 6 points. And I don't know what it is about the Colts, but he just loves the matchup against Vontae Davis. He always seems to find the end zone against the Colts, and it felt like, to me at least, he was the Steelers' most dynamic offensive player. And I didn't write much down about this next player, but I also wanted to give a quick shout-out to Ladarius Green. It felt like we got to see our first look of what he can do when he's actually involved in the Steelers' offense. Didn't record a catch in Cleveland last week, and in his first game against the Cowboys, he had, I think, 2 or 4 catches, but he didn't really make much of an impact. But this week, he definitely made his presence felt with 2 catches for 67 yards. a long of 35 yards, and just nice long plays up the seam that we've been waiting to see from him, and it's finally nice to see what we thought we were going to see from him. So I think going forward, that's definitely going to be a key in the Steelers' offense. You had wrote a little bit about our predictions from this past week, and you hit on a lot of them, didn't you?
I actually did really well this week with my predictions. My first prediction was that the Steelers would get at least 3 sacks. I'm going to pretend like that I said they would get 3 sacks. But anyway, coming up, I was right on point with that. They got 3 sacks. And however, I only correctly predicted one of the players to actually get the sack. I had said one would come from Hargrave, one from Shazier, and one from Matthews. I got Hargrave right. And that I will count the 3 sacks, and getting one of the players right is pretty good, since one came from William Gay and the other for James Harrison. And if you remember, I was close to saying James Harrison, but I switched it to Ricardo Matthews at the end. I also predicted 2 picks from the defense, and I said one pick would be from the safeties, and it would be from Mike Mitchell, and the other would come from Shazier. But Mike Mitchell did indeed get his first pick of the year. It looks like this superstition is going to continue forever. So it's what player are we going to crap on after this that's going to have a good game. Anyhow, I was just again correct. 2 picks for the defense and 1 going to Mike Mitchell. However, the second pick didn't go to Shazier. It did go to William Gay. William Gay had the game that I predicted Shazier to have, because I predicted Shazier to get a sack and an interception, and William Gay got a sack and an interception. So I just confused what players needed there.
Yeah.
And then overall, I predicted Big Ben to throw 3 touchdowns and no interceptions in a 31-10 win. Well, Big Ben threw 3 touchdowns and no interception in a 28-7 win. I was off by 3 points, well, 6 in total for the overall score, and I correctly chose how many touchdowns Big Ben would throw and how many interceptions. I would also like to say this while I'm thinking about it. Rest in peace, Vontae Davis. His ankles are probably broken. I don't think he's ever going to recover.
Oh, jeez.
Because there's the play when Antonio Brown just broke his ankles, and I just sat there and laughed as he went down, and Antonio Brown went towards the end zone. But how about you? How did you do on your predictions?
I was okay. My first prediction was that the Ben Roethlisberger would connect two times on deep balls of 30 yards or more, and he did actually get at least three, I believe. He might have gotten 4 completions of 30 yards or more. He had several to Antonio Brown. He had 2 to Ladarius Green and 1 to Eli Rogers, so the deep ball was definitely in play. Roethlisberger only finished with 221 yards, but he only threw the ball 21 times as well. It was clear that Le'Veon Bell was the key cog in the offense today, along with Brown, but the deep ball was nonetheless there for Roethlisberger. I also predicted that if Scott Tolzien starts, he was going to play a pretty clean game, and he didn't. And I figured he wouldn't commit a single turnover until the final 5 minutes that led to a score. Considering everything that happened, I'd say he played a somewhat clean game. However, he did fumble the ball on the first play, and he ended up throwing 2 interceptions, one of which did come in the final 5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. However, the Steelers jumped out ahead so quickly that he never really got a chance to bring the Colts back into the game. I mean, he had a couple chances, but the goal line stands kept the Colts from getting back on the board again. So, as we said, the score may not have made it seem as close as it really was, but at the same time, the Colts really just never could get anything going, and they couldn't muster anything more than once against the Steelers' defense. And I said the Steelers would win a close and sloppy game, 28-17, in a score that doesn't tell the full story. And again, this score doesn't tell the full story. However, I was right with the Steelers getting 28 points. I didn't think the Colts were going to be able to be held out of the end zone on 2 separate occasions. But if you want to look at if I'm wishfully thinking for my prediction, it could have easily been 28-21 or 28-17, depending on how the Colts had gone with those 4th down conversions on the goal line. But I was also right. I thought Le'Veon Bell and Brown were going to have some more big games, but I also figured the offense was going to struggle to get into the end zone, and they did not. 28 points is pretty self-explanatory, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. They did really well. I think the first 3 drives getting into the end zone, each of those, that was a high-powered offense. And like you said, that was the offense we kind of came into the year expecting with the addition of Ladarius Green and how everyone was coming together. That was the offense that the Steelers fans have been waiting for.
Yeah, I'm definitely really excited to see what they can do going forward, and I'm really hoping that Sammy Coates' fingers can get back in to. I think they're broken. I hope they can get healed up quickly, because that's just if he can get back to what he was at his best in the beginning of the year when he was having like 5 games with a 40-yard reception. I think that's going to make. I think that's what the one thing this offense is missing from making it something that can be a 30 points a game offense, and maybe that in being able to run the ball against tough teams. But we'll learn more about that next week. Is there anything else you want to add here before we wrap things up? I saw you were talking a little bit about an announcer that had recapped the game earlier.
I'm going to get to that in a second. First, I want to take a step back to Sammy Coates. What if I told you there was a receiver that has been targeted 8 times in 2 games and hasn't recorded a catch in either of those games? Surely you would think it's a high schooler or it's a college player maybe. But no, this is Sammy Coates right now. Sammy Coates has 8 straight targets out of the catch. That's just completely awful between the last 2 games. And I don't mean to just pick on him because, he sucks. It's not his fault. I'm putting a lot of the blame on the coaches here. I don't understand if he's really that bad with his injury. Isn't it just best that he just stay on the bench until he recovers? Like, there's no point in putting a player that can't record a catch into a game. There is absolutely no reason. If this is what the Steelers are going to get out of him, just leave him on the sideline for now. Do more 2 tight end sets. Put Roosevelt Nix in the backfield. Anything that requires less wide receivers. Because Coach should not be out there. It's just bad, honestly. And I don't understand. I think the coaches need to start taking him out and leave him on the bench. I mean, now he's probably close to recover, but
his confidence has definitely had to take a hit from all this.
Oh, completely. This is just bad on all angles. The coaches should have left him out for the past 3 games, and it's very similar to what I thought of Russell Wilson and the Seahawks. Russell Wilson got his ankle hurt really early for the Seahawks, and I thought they should have let him rest for 1 game against the Rams, but they ended up losing anyway when he played. And this is just what's happening. The Steelers are doing the same thing with Sammy Coates. They're just playing him and not letting him recover, which he should just be let to recover. What do you think?
I agree with you, but like you said, I think he's actually closer to getting back to what he was. So that point would have passed, which is what you're talking about. I'm not trying to discount what you're saying. But you know what I'm also wondering is, actually, I heard that Sammy now has 13 straight targets going back to like 3 weeks ago where he hasn't had a catch. I'm thinking about most of these routes he's been running. I think maybe 1 or 2 of them have been 10 yards or shorter. If you want to get him involved, get his confidence back up, why not throw him a quick screen? You see usually the Steelers do that with Brown on their opening drive, or they'll do something like that to just get him into the game. Just throw a quick screen out to him. You know what? Maybe it gets a couple yards. Maybe it's even a loss. But just getting the ball in his hands has to help him, especially when you're mired in something like this, something that doesn't happen to many people at all. And someone who struggles catching the ball, this definitely isn't a boost for his self-confidence, someone that the Steelers really are going to need going forward. So I think going forward, it's going to have to be getting him involved early, and I hope that's going to be what it takes to get him back into the offense.
Whatever it takes.
Oh,
anyhow.
Right before you get started, I wanted to say I know why you're harping on him right now. It's because we're hoping right now that he's going to be that guy that breaks out next week.
Oh yeah, he will be, because this is my breaking point with Sammy Coates, because before he even got injured last year, I did not think he was that good. I did not think he was worth the third rounder. It was just similar to saying, ooh, speed, let me take that. It's just like drafting Usain Bolt. He wasn't drafted for his hands. He wasn't drafted for his route running skills. He was drafting purely for his speed. And I didn't respect the move. I didn't like the move when it happened. I just have not been a Sammy Coates lover, just like Jarvis Jones. I've been a Sammy Coates and Jarvis Jones hater since they've gotten here. And this season has not helped me for either right now. And this is where I'm hoping Sammy Coates will turn around, as his injury's is 3 weeks old, 4 weeks old. I'm hoping that this next game is where he's recovered enough to do something. But you're exactly correct. This is the player I'm crapping on, and he's going to be the player to watch next week.
Yeah. You wanted to talk about Le'Veon Bell now, correct?
Oh, yep. Okay. So after the game, I was just watching all the recaps, and then they got to the Steelers-Colts, and the announcer was recapping the game, and he was talking about how Bell is not having that great of a year due to his lack of explosive plays he's had in previous seasons. What do you think about that?
I understand where he's coming from. I feel like watching Bell, specifically the last 2 weeks, I feel like he's done everything right, and I felt like the only thing that hasn't happened has been a long run, kind of like something we saw in 2014 against the Panthers. I think he had like an 81-yard run. And maybe some of that can be attributed to his patience, but you know what? I don't think necessarily that someone who can run the ball for 60 yards every time, if that's what you're looking for, is necessarily a good thing. I'm just going to make a quick comparison to, I don't know if you saw, but in college football, Syracuse and Pittsburgh just played this past week. I'm also a Pitt fan. They played in the highest scoring college football game in Division I FBS history. I think the final score was something like 76-61, something like that. I already know the Pittsburgh defense is horrible, particularly their pass defense. But the reason why Syracuse scored as much as they did is because Pitt had the ball for like 5 different drives of like 3 plays or less because they were scoring so quickly. So, scoring quickly isn't always the best thing, depending on the situation. But I think that long runs like that are overrated. Bell's definitely an elite running back, and not having a long run of 50 yards is not a huge deal to me, considering you look at the rest of his body of work. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. When I heard it, I was really salty. Of rushers with at least 100 attempts, Bell is the 7th in yards per attempt. So one of the biggest names this year at running back that people are loving is David Johnson. I mean, mostly for his fantasy value, but he is being relied on for a lot of the snaps in Arizona, and he is worse than Le'Veon Bell in yards per attempt. Now, what really baffles me is that Bell is being consistent. He's at 7th, and he's running these 5 to 6 yard gains every play. And I really like this consistency. I would rather 4.5 yards every time rather than him getting several 20-yard plays and then being stuffed at or before the line of scrimmage. Bell doesn't go down before the line of scrimmage very often. I think he has the lowest rates in the NFL, and I appreciate that. I think it's really great for him. And not to mention that the guy discredited Bell just because he didn't have those explosive plays of last year. He's saying he was not having a great year just because of the explosive plays. Not after missing 3 games, Bell's leading the league for running backs in reception with 57. Like that's incredible. He's doing more than just a running back. He's being the number 2 wide receiver for Pittsburgh right now. That being said, it really pissed me off. The announcer said, just crap. That's what I have to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If he did have those explosive plays, how much higher would his yards per carry be,
Exactly. It really wouldn't be that much more.
But anyways, one last thing I wanted to touch on, which I just thought about. I heard that the Steelers are, with the return of Bud Dupree, there's going to be another rotation at outside linebacker. And it sounds like there could be an odd man out because Harrison and Dupree are going to play. So it sounds like the rotation for the it sounds like there's 2 backup spots and 3 players for those spots, and they are Jarvis Jones, Anthony Chickalo, and Arthur Moats. And I know where you stand on this, and I'm going to tell you real quickly. I am just about done with the Jarvis Jones experiment. I've been someone that's backed him for a long time, hoping that he might be able to turn the corner and become a solid player. He might be a decent backup for other teams, but the one thing he was drafted to do is something he simply cannot do. He can play the run somewhat well. He can go in pass coverage against some average backs, but he can't rush the passer. And that's the whole reason he's there, is it not? I mean,
I completely think so.
I mean, I've wanted to support him for so long, and I have, but what is this? His third? I think it's his fourth or fifth year now. I think it's time to shelve him. If he's a nice depth option for someone, if you really need him to play against the run, but I think right now you let him ride the bench, and you give Moats the playing time. Moats the playing time first because particularly the last 2 weeks he's played well, and then Chickalo, I think you play him because of the opportunity he presents. Someone is a good special teams player and someone who has a good upside to potentially be another good backup or maybe even a starter someday. I want to see more out of Anthony Chickalo. So for that reason, I say Jarvis Jones is going to probably be the odd man out. Also considering his contract is up at the end of the year and Chickalo and Moats are not up at the end of the year.
It's gonna be weird. That's what I gotta say, because two linebackers contracts are up after this year. Lawrence Timmons and Jarvis Jones, different linebacking positions. One's middle, one's outside, but it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with the linebackers after this, because I agree with you. I think it's gonna be Jarvis Jones out because they're probably gonna give Moats the playing time because they're probably already considering, like, we probably need to get rid of Jarvis Jones because he's not worth the money. I mean, well, right now he is because I'm pretty sure he's still on his rookie contract.
Yes.
But he's not worth a big deal. And it's just going to be weird. I don't know because James, I didn't even, this just came to me. I didn't even consider James Harrison's probably retiring. He retired 2 years ago, and then he's like, nah, I'm coming back. So this is probably Harrison's last year, especially since he broke the record and such. He's probably at peace. So that's three linebackers that are possibly leaving. I hope that makes me think that they might possibly keep Jarvis Jones. I hope not. I really hope not.
Well, you know what? I'll tell you what I think they're going to do. First of all, I think Timmons is either going to be offered a 1-year small deal or he's going to be let go because they gave Vince Williams that extension. I expect Williams is going to be getting his job next year. Shifting to the outside, yeah, as you said, Harrison already retired. It really seems like he's getting towards the end of the road as far as how much he wants to play. So he'll be gone. And then I think we have Chickalo and Moats under contract and then Dupree, so that'll leave us with 3. I think best case scenario for Jarvis Jones, he gets invited back to training camp. I think what the Steelers are going to do and what I'm hoping they're going to do is draft not 1 but 2 pass rushers in the first 3 or 4 rounds. Because you know what? This is what I think. I've heard people talk about this is what the Browns should do with their quarterbacks until they find one. Just draft 2 until every year until they get a good one. It's starting to get that point with the Steelers outside linebackers because they haven't had a premier pass rusher for a while. And I think it's something they're going to have to do. Like I said, you can bring Jones back for training camp, but we already know what he is. And I think it's time. We don't know what Chickalo is. We don't know what Chickalo and Dupree are. That being said, I expect Dupree's going to be starting next year. Moats might. I don't want to see that, though. I don't really want to see Chickalo either, but then again, in a year from now, he could be a lot better. I think it's going to be Chickalo and Moats on the outside, backing up Dupree, and hopefully a first-round pick starting on the other side. So that's what I have to say about the outside linebackers.
They might think about it, though, because we do still have Metakevich, who we drafted this year, who out of Temple, who's still on the roster. So
that's right. I thought he was inside, though. Isn't he an inside?
I think you might be right. I apologize.
Well, either way,
Anyway.
he's not going to be worse than Jarvis Jones.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And I mean, he won the Butkus Award in college last year. He's a solid player. He was the camp darling, if you will, this year. I think he has a future.
I hope so. It would be really worth the money because he came as a late-round pick, 7th or 5th, if I remember correctly, one of those two.
Anyways, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up today?
Not that I can think of.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We'll be back on Friday previewing the Steelers matchup against the New York Giants at home for their game on Sunday. If you have any questions about the show, please email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook. We're Stronger Than Steel Podcast. On Twitter, we're STS Podcast 1. That's our Twitter handle. And we usually post our podcast episodes on YouTube. That takes some time, however. So if you want to check them out right after we've finished this episode. We always post on SoundCloud first at Stronger Than Steel Podcast. So we hope you enjoyed this episode and hope you guys have a good week. Take care.